I've covered the big water decks of Neo 1, the biggest fire deck of Neo 1, and now it is time to get into the big grass deck of Neo 1. So of course we are talking about the Neo Genesis Meganium that has the Pokemon power Wild Growth. As long as this thing is in play, all grass energy attached to grass Pokemon provide 2 grass energy instead of 1. Despite Wild Growth being an extremely good Pokemon power for the grass type, this Meganium didn't see a lot of play before Neo 1, mainly because it didn't have any good partners to pair with it. In base Neo, you had the Jungle Exeggutor that could deal a lot of damage, potentially utilizing Wild Growth. In Rocketon, you really only had Erica and Koga cards, which really just worked better using their own engines. In Neo On, we finally got a pairing for this Meganium that could go absolutely bonkers on your opponent. I'm talking about Aquapolis Exeggutor. And ignore Super Explosion, that's not what we're going for here. I'm talking about Called Shot. For 1 grass energy, you're able to snipe for 20. For 2 grass energy, you're able to snipe for 40. Which means that for 2 energy, you can basically knock out any baby on the field. And for 3 grass energy, you're sniping for 60. You're going to be knocking out most basic Pokemon in this format. Exeggutor and Meganium will be able to hit active Pokemon like Feraligators or Kabutops for weakness, but the true strength of Called Shot is to hit baby Pokemon on the bench and any other basic Pokemon that can be knocked out easily that doesn't have a focus band attached to it yet. I'm glad that Meganium finally gets a chance to shine, much like 3 versions of Feraligator and one of the Neo Genesis Typhlosions. It's got this reputation for being the worst starter Pokemon, and so I'm glad it actually got to excel a little bit in the TCG. So let's get into this deck list. Going with that E-Reader Chikorita for this, mainly because it's got that water resistance, which is going to be very useful in Neo 1, running a full playset of that Chikorita. Also going to be going E-Reader for the Bayleaf. This one isn't as important as Bayleaf is more of just a bridge between Chikorita and Meganium. But that Razor Leaf that's dealing 30 damage for 2 energy is pretty nice to have on top of the 70 HP, which works as a nice stepping stone up into Meganium, which has 100 HP, putting it just out of range of a lot of Okos. Now against a deck like Entei Cargo, of course, you're going to get hit for weakness. You're not going to be able to sustain as much damage. That's where Focus Band's going to be more useful than your Goldberry. But against most water decks, which were more abundant than the fire decks, you're going to be doing fine, especially since the Chikorita and the Bayleaf in this build have water resistance, and then Meganium has 100 HP, so you're going to be able to benefit more from Goldberry. Even though it is another basic Pokemon with only 40 HP, I am going with this Execute because of Growth Spurt, because it's going to allow you to attach an additional energy, which is really going to help when you evolve up into Exeggutor next turn and use Called Shot. Any form of energy acceleration is welcome for this Exeggutor. Every grass energy attached is going to be an additional 10 damage you can deal with Called Shot. If you have a Meganium in play, that's an additional 20 damage per grass energy attached. So a base Execute that can attach an energy for an attack is going to benefit the strategy of this deck much more than just attacking for minimal damage like a basic Pokemon could do. Now this deck will be running 4 copies of Cleffa because the full setup isn't really complete until you have a Meganium on the field, which will take at least 2 turns. I'm not really using any Pokemon Breeder in this deck. In Neo 1, you really have time to evolve up into Stage 2 Pokemon. It was a great format for Stage 2 Pokemon. You've got the wiggle room. You don't have to worry too much about being the fastest deck on the block because you've definitely got the power to back it up mid to late game. So I'm also going to be running 3 copies of Professor Elm, which will help supplement if you don't actually get a Cleffa out there. You don't get to use Eek as much, or if you have to flip a coin if you're in a match against another Cleffa or something. But even so, running a full playset of Copycat as well. So even if your opponent gets off an Eek and you're not able to, you can still use Copycat, get that great hand refresher. Also going to be running Pokemon Fan Club, which is going to be very essential for getting those Cleffa, Execute, and Chikorita onto the bench when you need them. Say turn 1, you didn't get a Cleffa, but you really want to use one because you've got a bad hand. Pokemon Fan Club is going to be helping in that. And then Pokemon Trader is also going to be making sure that you don't end up with just a handful of Meganiums and Exeggutors at the start of the game. If that's the case, you can trade some of them for Chikoritas, Bayleefs, get the Pokemon that you need at the beginning of the game. Like I said before, Neo-On is a format built around Stage 2 Pokemon. So for the most part, you're going to be able to spend a couple of turns using Cleffa's Eek, using Pokemon Fan Club, and Pokemon Trader as much as you need to. Once you get the Meganium and the Exeggutor on the field, that's when you can start sniping, take it out to your opponent's strategy out from under them. The exception will be against Entei Cargo, where you're really going to have to hurry up to outspeed that Magcargo, because Entei can be so fast, can load down Magcargo with so much energy. You're not really going to stand a chance unless you can get your setup super quick and start sniping those Slugmas faster than your opponent can evolve into Magcargos. Now against Entei Cargo builds, you are going to want to rely more on Focus Band than Goldberry, because they're going to be able to OHKO you very easily. In that case, Goldberry is not going to help you very much, but against every other type of deck that's really only going to be hitting for maybe a maximum of 60 damage per turn, Goldberry is going to be the way to go to keep Meganium alive and also keep Exeggutor alive, since it's your main attacker. And like most Neo-On decks running a full playset of Double Gust, the success of this deck is very dependent on how you strategically place those Double Gust and pull out your opponent's active Pokemon that can't really attack you back for heavy damage. Maybe they're stall cards, maybe they're baby Pokemon, because Exeggutor is going to be attacking their bench. You want to pull out those Pokemon that are more troublesome, that are more disruption cards, that aren't really going to affect you in the active position, like a Noctowl. That way you can just attack your opponent's bench over and over again, knock out those babies and other basics. 2 copies of Energy Stadium as well, because an extra energy on your turn is only going to help. It's going to help you way more than your opponent, because thanks to Meganium, that energy is worth double to you. And in case you weren't able to pause in time, this deck finishes with 15 basic grass energy. So besides Entei Cargo, what really poses a threat to this deck? Well, on the surface, not a lot. Now, Steel decks will resist Grass type, but thanks to Exeggutor's Cold Shot, you don't have to apply resistance to anything you're attacking on the bench. And so you're just going to be sniping away, not even worrying about what the active Pokemon's resistance is. If you are in a matchup against a water deck, it may actually be more useful to use Exeggutor's Big Explosion, or switch into Meganium and use its attack in order to deal super effective damage against any of the Feraligators and Kabutops. Not to mention the Dark Tyranitar line, or even the Onyxes that were commonly used with Steelix decks. Grass was a way more powerful type in Neo-On than people realized. On weakness alone, most people just focused on the big water decks, on the big fire decks, on meal decks, and they completely ignored the sniping ability of Exeggutor when combined with the wild growth of Meganium. Besides fire decks, what are the weaknesses? Well, you have Muck for one, which is going to shut down wild growth and really hamper your Cold Shot attack, making SMF a bit of an uneven matchup. Stall could be a bit of a problem, as Exeggutor's Cold Shot couldn't really accumulate enough energy to completely OHKO a Chansey or a Blissey on the bench, and those decks would be healing ridiculous amounts while they decked you out. I hope you've been enjoying these series of Neo-On deck lists. If you've got any decks that you want to see featured on the channel from Neo-On or any other vintage Pokemon format, let me know down in the comments. Let me know about your experiences running this deck, or if you would pair Meganium's Wild Growth with any other grass type Pokemon. Links to my socials in the description. Like and subscribe to help the channel grow. And until next video, bye.